My name is Kevin Callahan. I'm with the 8th Air Force Historical Society of Minnesota. Today's date is November 14th, 2012, and we're here with Al Lieberman at his place of work. And Glenn Rudell is here and Myron Asper, and at any point during this conversation, if you guys have questions, I want you to feel free to jump in. And if there's something I don't ask, also do that. Of course, Myron has told you already, his brother was a P-47 pilot, so he knows quite a bit.
Lucky him.
Glenn was a pilot with Cherokees and so forth?
Club Cherokee, yes.
Yeah, so they've got some background, probably more background than I have. So if I don't forget to ask a question, we'll go ahead and do that. Al, would you state your full name?
Al Lieberman.
And how do you spell Lieberman?
Lieberman.
Did you go by any nicknames or anything during the service?
No.
What's your date of birth?
7/26/23.
And how old does that make you today?
89.
And where were you born?
Minneapolis, in the Swedish hospital, which
Oh.
is now,
I don't know what it is now.
it's Metropolitan Medical, I think, or something like that.
Yeah. Could you tell me a little bit about your parents, what their names were, and maybe a little about their background?
Yeah, my dad was Albert, and he was in the First World War, not in combat. And my mother was Dorothy, and they both were born in Europe. They were from Lithuania. I was, as I said, born in Minneapolis, and I haven't traveled very far. A little bit in the war, but that's it.
So your parents were the original immigrants for your family here to the U.S.?
Yes, well, my grandparents.
Grandparents.
Yeah.
And then what did your father do in World War I?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
He was just there, but I have some pictures, or remember some pictures of him in uniform.
Did he make it over to France or
No,
anything?
no.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever went off the shores.
Yeah. Well, my, let's see, this would be my grandfather was in World War I, but he was a farmer, and they needed him more as a farmer than they did as a soldier. So I got a picture of him in World War I, and he never really did anything. They sent him back to the farm to raise food because they needed it, and that was more important. So did you have any siblings growing up?
Just a sister, who is now gone.
Mm-hmm. And you grew up, I take it then, in Minneapolis?
No, the times were tough. In fact, I remember, sort of hazy, the 19, was it 29?
Yeah.
Crash?
Yes.
Yeah, and
You're only 6 years old, but you still aware of that?
well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, things were tough, and my father was a merchant, and so we ended up out in Oaks, North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in the southeast corner, sort of.
Oh yeah, sure.
And
Okay, so your father had a business called the Golden Rule. What was that?
it was a ladies and men's store in Oaks, North Dakota, which didn't have as much population as, I would say, 2 or 3 blocks around here.
Yeah, yeah,
It was a pretty small town.
yeah. Did you attend school there then, growing up?
I went through the 3rd grade, and then they saw an opportunity to sell the store there and move to Valley City, North Dakota. And you know where that is? It's on Interstate 94, 60 miles straight west of Fargo.
Yeah,
And I graduated high school there.
yeah.
And the education we got was wonderful.
Yeah.
I know how to hold a pencil properly in my hand.
Good penmanship.
And to write everything.
Well, let's see. So you grew up and would have been there during the Dust Bowl, wouldn't you, in
Yeah.
North Dakota?
Yeah.
Do you have any memories of the Dust Bowl?
Well, I remember hot summers, and we didn't have it as bad as they had out, let's say, in the Williston area,
Yeah.
where farmers couldn't grow anything and couldn't make the taxes and would lose their property. And guess what happened then?
Yeah.
Williston. Isn't that a shame for those poor people?
Well, I've interviewed people that lived in southwestern Minnesota who said they saw this almost like a blizzard in the winter, but it was topsoil coming at them, and it was followed by people's kids from the Dakotas, because they didn't have any way to support them, followed eventually by the farmers themselves. There was this influx that came into Minnesota from the Dakotas of people that were farming.
Well, I knew there were bad days.
Yeah.
And everybody worked hard, and my folks, you know, they didn't get rich. They just got by.
Yeah.
And I graduated high school there and came here to the University of Minnesota. And I was in one of the fraternities, which I didn't join. I was at Pioneer Hall. And I came here, I was all excited about some of the marvelous science going on at the university. I'd read an article about the atom smasher, which is just not far from Northrop Auditorium, or it was then. And it was right behind the physics building. So I registered I was going to be a physicist.
Yeah.
Well, before they could let me actually sign up for that, I had to go through about 2 weeks of examinations, testing and so on, to make sure I was able to handle it without
More training. Yeah.
or without making the grade and being losing out.
Yeah.
So I had a real good record. They had me in the upper 10% of not knowing everything, but in the capabilities of what they had at that time. I remember them telling me the senior grade. Anyway, I went in, and before a quarter had gone by, or about then, I realized a physicist is a laboratory, a lab worker type person. They're
indoors all the day.
It's
Yeah.
bookworm stuff,
Yeah.
and that's not my style.
You wanted more action.
I'm an extrovert.
Yeah.
So I decided to switch majors, and one of the counselors said, all of your prerequisites that you've taken are the same as for chemical engineering. I said, all right, put me there. Well, it was halfway through that first year. No, it was at the end of that first year when the Japs hit Pearl Harbor.
Now let me back up for a second. What year were you graduating from high school?
41.
And then the attack occurred on December 7th, and there's actually a holiday, if you look on the calendar, it's called Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day, and there's fewer and fewer people who remember Pearl Harbor. So I want to ask you, what do you remember of Pearl Harbor?
A lot. It was Sunday morning, as I recall, I'm sure it was. And I was temporarily at that fraternity house because they were rushing me. They wanted me to join. And but they were all real rich guys, and I wasn't. And I wasn't used to all that kind of type of guys. So I ended up moving to Pioneer Hall, but I remember that, and I was in the fraternity house when the news came, and we were all talking about it, everything, and we realized that it was pretty major.
Yeah.
And
Did you hear it on a radio or
I can't recall.
newspaper?
I don't recall. But
You knew your life was going to change at that point.
I don't know if we looked on it exactly that way.
Yeah.
Because, you know, at that age, and I had to be 18 or so, and you don't look on, my life has now changed. I don't recall it.
Yeah. What was the feeling or information about Germany and Japan prior to the attack? Were people concerned that we might be involved with the war, or
Well, on the attack, we knew. I think President Roosevelt, I think we declared war.
yeah,
I think that was all settled
yeah.
at that time.
Well, I know people that have told me that there were people that were isolationists, and that all ended immediately with the attack. So the isolationist viewpoints seemed to just disappear, and people were behind Roosevelt's Day of Infamy speech.
I have no counter recollection like that. It was all gung-ho from here,
Yeah.
from that point on.
Yeah. So you heard Roosevelt would give that Day of Infamy speech on the radio, or?
I don't recall it directly,
Yeah.
but, you know, I've heard so much about it again that, yeah, it gets ingrained.
Yeah. Did you continue in chemical engineering then, or what happened after Pearl
Yes,
Harbor?
I continued, but only for a short time, because everybody was either getting drafted or signing up, and I decided that I'm gonna enlist.
Yeah.
Now, they told me that I had a deferment because I was in chemical engineering, or I guess some of the physicist type of thing had slid over or something, and I supposedly was going to be deferred until June of
42,
no, about 45
43?
or something like
Oh,
that, but
oh.
that wouldn't last
Yeah.
anyway. That was, you know, technical. And so I signed up, and I wanted to be in the Army Air Corps.
Yeah.
I remember seeing, I think there were DC-3s or something flying over Valley City, and I would look up and think, boy, that's something. And I always liked it.
Had you been in an airplane before the war?
Never.
So you enlisted, and then were you inducted in Fort Snelling, or where was your induction?
I enlisted, and then go back to school, and we'll call you when we're ready for you. And it wasn't too long before I got notice to report. And I had to report downtown to someplace near the railroad station.
Oh,
not
yeah.
Great Northern, but the other one.
The Milwaukee Road, and across the
Milwaukee.
street is the Federal Building. They probably went down there.
I guess, unless they didn't have a federal building. I remember someplace like that.
Yeah.
And as I recall, they loaded us. I don't know if we were supposed to have a satchel of our stuff with us or not, but, no, I went back to school for a while, and then I got notice. So then I had to pack up everything, and it was all, get ready, I have to report to, I think it had to be Fort Snelling, and I don't have real sharp recollection of that. I think it was.
When were
And-
when were you first sort of in the system?
Okay, I reported at Fort Snelling, and they put us on trains, I believe. And we were sent down to a suburb of St. Louis, Camp
Jefferson Barracks?
Jefferson Barracks,
Yeah.
absolutely.
My dad went through that.
Yeah. And we were there for, I don't know, about 20, 30 days or so.
What was that like?
Well, it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before, but it was the Army. And
Did they teach you like how to salute and march and that kind of thing, or was
not
it?
so much that,
Okay.
but it was all kinds of other things.
A lot of testing and things?
I don't really recall, actually. But yeah, they had us doing some marching and things. I think they had to keep us busy while they were sorting everything and all of us out.
Yeah, I suppose there were so many people enlisting that they had to
Yeah.
try and get it under
But
under
it was
control.
all based, I think, on probably Army Air Corps type guys, because then I was shipped to, over in Wisconsin, one of the colleges. And, I'd say within 60 miles of Madison. Beloit College. And because at that time I was in the Army Air Corps, or headed that way,
Yeah,
and they put me through about, I think it was maybe, I'm guessing 4 or 5 months of college, CTD, College
Oh.
Training Detachment.
yeah,
And I was taking courses. There were meteorology, all kinds of things of that nature. Just basic things I had to know. And I did real good there. Of course, I came out of college. And
Did they have you doing anything with light airplanes at the end of that?
they had us in there was about 1 or 2 sessions of taking us up in a Piper Cub with a pilot. And I went up the first time I ever got off the ground. And we got in, and this pilot was, as I recall, I was behind him. It was front and back. And he said, well, here, I'm going to give you the stick and you can try to fly it. And he says, hold it level, and so on and so forth. And I was, what I thought was holding it level, I didn't know what I was doing. So he got a little bit frustrated with me. He says, I told you to hold it level. You're climbing and we're going to stall out. And about the second time he says, I'm going to show you what happens if you stall out. So he pulled it up and went into a stall, and we ended up with about a 1.5 turn spin. And I thought,
That's your introduction to flying.
that was almost, I remember thinking, gosh, what the heck did I get into? That was awful. That was really awful.
Yeah,
But I didn't decide to get shifted and switch over to something else. But that was all.
Yeah.
I think 1 or 2 sessions, and I was waiting for the same type of problem with the second time with him, but it didn't happen. But then we got orders to go to Santa Ana Army Air Base after, I'd say 2 or 3 months at Beloit. And at Santa Ana, there are 2 segments, and this was the biggest base that I think I'd ever seen. Most people in one place. It was about a square mile or more, a mile in each direction, or a 1.5 miles of, I guess, Quonset buildings, or they were 2 floors and just cots and tons of guys. And we did everything, but or including learning to march and everything else, and you name it. And that was the first really military base. And
So did they start you off in a sequence of learning the planes?
well, no. The first section was classification. And the second section, and that was about 2 months or so, and then the rest of that was pre-flight, unless you got washed out. And if you got washed out, then you were sent back to be in in an artillery, or all kinds of different Army branches. But this is a very interesting story. Do you want me to go into these details?
Definitely.
Because this is a real interesting story. It was during a break, about a half-hour break, and we were just milling around, throwing a ball or doing something right outside of the CO hut. And we had gone through many tests. Boy, I'll tell you, they measured us. They measured everything from our hair follicles to our toenails, and testing everything. We had color reading, or color sensitivity tests, psychological tests. I can tell you some real funny things. I don't want to do it on camera about the test they gave us. We would go through all of the psychological testing, everything that you can possibly imagine, and physical, and how good we were. You saw how I walked in here with a walker. We had lots of physical workouts and things, and they had ropes on tall structures that we would climb up.
Did they get you in pretty good shape at San
Oh,
Diego?
terrific.
Yeah.
And I could go up real fast. I did everything fairly good. Nothing wrong with me. And they tested us in every which way, how fast our reflexes were, and I can't name all of the things, but they looked from our hair follicles to our toenails, like I was saying, and this was still classification. Okay, within the first 2 or maybe 3 months. You can imagine how much they test you. So finally, one day we had a half hour of loose time, and all of a sudden the sergeant at arms comes out on the steps of this hut. He said, hey Lieberman. I says, here, sir. Everything was sir, boy. You know. And he says, you're supposed to report to a lieutenant, I forget the name.
Excuse me for just a minute. I have to pause for technical reasons. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I remember the name. Report to hut number so-and-so, Lieutenant Landsberg. I remember his name. And I should have remembered otherwise anyway. And I found out where Lieutenant Landsberg was. It was so far away. I had about close to a mile walk through, and I finally came to that hut, or a small building. And I was thinking so many thoughts. Boy, I'll bet you, where am I going, to the field artillery which incidentally, I was an ROTC at the University of Minnesota. I
Oh.
joined up.
Uh-huh.
And I was, boy, as good as I got in close order drill and everything else. I liked all that stuff. And so I got over there. We were in uniform at that time, everything, all military. And I thought, shh, well, this is it, but I gotta go. So I walked up, there was a woman,
Receptionist,
secretary,
yeah.
and I said, I walked up to her and I was at full military demeanor, and I said, ma'am, and we weren't cadets at that time, but my name is Al Lieberman. I'm supposed to report to Lieutenant Landsberg. Oh yes, just a minute, Al. And she got up and turned around, walked through a door right behind her, and she came back in, and she said, oh, go right on in, he's waiting for you. So I took a breath, and I walked in, and there was a fellow, an officer, sitting behind a desk. And I walked up to his desk, and I said, sir, and I forgot what I was. I think we were misters at that time, before we became cadets.
Pre-cadets, yeah.
I said, Lieberman, Al, and I said, reporting as ordered. And I went back to either a parade rest or at ease or something. No, standing there. And he says, take it easy, Al, sit down. And I was sort of taken aback. I said, sit down. He says, and he stood up and held out his hand. He says, I'm your cousin. I'm married to your second cousin. I didn't even know. I'm married to your second cousin, Ruth, in Fargo. And I sat down and there I was. I got a reprieve.
You thought you were going off to march through the mud in the infantry.
You got that right. And so he explained to me that Ruth, he was there as, he was sent there to do his things, and Ruth became a clerk. She was working there. They would do that for their wives or something, or I mean, the Army would do that for the officers' wives. And she had been sorting some papers from the classification section, and she came across an Al Lieberman. Oh, one of the things that when we were in classification, I'm jumping backwards, you'd have to fill out all kinds of things and tests and everything. And one of them is, if you were given 3 choices as in the Army Air Corps, which would you choose? In what order? And they had pilot, bombardier, and
Navigator?
And navigator. And I took a chance because they didn't like wise guys. But I wrote down, what do you think I put down?
Well, I don't know. That's a tough situation, because if you put what you want, they might not give it to you. So
Well-
what'd you put down, navigator or something?
No?
Pilot? Bombardier?
What would you do?
I'd put pilot. I'd be honest and say this is
No,
what
no,
I want.
in the order,
Oh,
in the order.
probably pilot, navigator, bombardier if I was asked.
You know what I did? And I remember that very well. That was burned into my mind. I put down pilot, pilot, pilot.
Oh,
My brother did the same thing on fighters. he said they had three choices. They put, you know, fighter or bombers or double or twin engine. And he put down fighter, fighter, fighter.
No, I put down pilot, pilot, pilot.
It worked.
And he says, Lieutenant, and I forget his first name. He's now passed on, but I remember he said you're going to come home with us. We live just right into Santa Ana, and I've got a pass for you to come here and over the weekend, and then we'll get back on Monday. So while I was there and we had food there and everything, and I'll tell you a funny story about that if we have time.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, Ruth told me that I could have had any one of the three I wanted because I qualified for all of them. So I was going to be a pilot. But I'll tell you, when we got there, we had a lovely dinner she had prepared, and he said, would you like a drink? I said, sure, you know, because we're cool, Joe cool, and you know, college kids, and I'd had drinks. I'm not going to say a lot or a little or anything, because maybe some of my grandchildren are going to be seeing this. I don't know. But he says, how do you want it? And I said, oh, I'll take it straight. So he poured a little shot glass, and Ruth had one, and he had one, and I did this. Well, as luck would have it, whenever you're trying to hit a peak, you better be ready for a stumble. And when I did that, I happened to, and I'd had shots before, I happened to take a breath. Oh, you know what happens? It goes the wrong way. And I really choked. Like my eyes were turning around. I really coughed. And I wanted to be a big shot, because I'm going to be a pilot. Instead, I almost took the top of my head off with a drink. That was one of the funny things I remember all these years.
Well, you learned how to drink after that experience. Now, don't inhale while you're slugging down the shot.
It never happened again. But anyway, I went through pre-flight.
Yeah. How long was that? Was that like a few months of
I'm going to
work?
guess pre-flight was about, I have no recollection.
Yeah.
I can only guess.
Did they, in pre-flight, did they put you in a chamber with where they like compress the air or something?
No,
or was that later?
I don't have any of
Oh,
that.
okay.
And I don't even remember any of that
Yeah.
in the actual training.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to guess that maybe it was another pre-flight, maybe about 4 months or so. But I don't have, there was a lot of physical things going on and getting us toughened up and marching and all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, we're lots of talking about where the guys were going and where there is, and there's different kinds of, we were going to go to primary. Well, my primary flight training was Tulare, California.
Mm-hmm.
And they were Stearmans, open cockpit, two cockpit. All primaries were two cockpit, always with an instructor, or at the beginnings, of course. And I went to Tulare, and flew Stearmans. Now there were Ryans, I remember that, single, low wing, and
That monoplane has got the front and back seating, is
yeah,
that the
there was
Ryan?
all
Yeah.
front and back.
Yeah,
In the Stearman, of course, there was a biplane. So there was a wing over you and a wing just under you.
yeah.
And the Stearman, the instructor would always sit in the front seat because he was underneath, and you were back there. So when they were going to do things, where we did all kinds of things, aerobatics like you wouldn't believe, because that was a real aerobatic plane. And we before we would do any maneuvers, we would have to turn to one side and roll way over, and then way over the other side, because we're clearing ourselves, clearing the area to make sure there's no others around. Then we can do whatever we wanted. And I'll tell you an interesting and a very funny story about our instructor, and he was fantastic, wonderful guy, and never did know his first name, but it was R.B. Howard, and at Tulare, California. Now this was a civilian flight school, and they had real nice quarters, little buildings with 6 or 8 of us, everybody with a nice, I don't know if we had single bedrooms or double bedrooms, but it was very nice, and showers, the works. And we flew out of Tulare, California. I had about 90 hours in a Stearman. And boy, that's where I really learned to fly. And now going back to that 15 minutes or half hour in the Cub Piper back in
CTD, yeah.
CTD, College Training Detachment, I thought I wanted to die. It was terrible. This was nothing. I loved it, but I was holding the controls, and that's the big difference. And R.B. Howard was a fantastic teacher, wonderful person, and that was a civilian flight school which was taken over by the Army and under Army auspices, and we marched and had to do parade work and everything else, just like a straight beginning military base. And we did maneuvers in that plane like you wouldn't believe. My favorite was a snap roll. They always told us when you're letting down to come in for a landing after an hour session out there and you're on your own. They said, don't just let down or glide down, or we want you to spin down. You kick it into a spin and then recover. And so that's what we used to do. But a snap roll was a horizontal one-turn spin, and boy, timing had to be right on the button. Were you a pilot?
No, but Glenn was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was probably, I've had a snap roll.
Well,
Didn't like it.
I've seen them, I
I
haven't done
loved
one.
it. That was my favorite,
My
really.
stomach never turned as fast as my body. I'd be upright already, my body was still coming around, and the stomach was still upside down.
Well, what you have to do, you're starting to, you pull up a little bit and you're getting it, you're cross-controlling, so your ailerons are going in different directions or something. I forgot what it was. And all of a sudden it would cut loose and you'd hit her once over. What it is, a roll or a spin, is one wing is stalled out and the other is going, has lift. So you start going over, but about the time you start over, in that split second, you have to already be into your recovery, right?
Oh, okay, I don't know,
Yeah.
the pilot did it, I was just for the ride.
Oh,
Oh, I know.
oh yeah, if you didn't do it,
I didn't do
then
it.
you were in trouble, because that's awful. But I did it, and I'd come around and you have it controlled, and you're back at it. So here's this plane up there, people would see it, and all of a sudden it'd do that. Keep going. Anyway, that spins. We couldn't, I always tried to do a real good Immelman, but that plane wouldn't quite make it because it didn't have injection, fuel injection or something, and it was stalled out about the time. An Immelman is a half loop where you do a half roll and come out flying in the other direction.
So you need some power right at the end of that to get it going, you mean?
But, you know, I
Yeah.
got to tell you something. Going back to when I was a kid in school, in high school or freshman, I used to get in down at the drugstore. They had a big magazine department, and they had all kinds of magazines, and they had magazines about World War I type of airplanes, about and stories about the early fighter planes, which were earlier than the Stearmans, of course. And I used to buy those, and I used to love to read them. So that was in my blood.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went through all of these, and I'd read about Immelmans and where these, I remember the Lone Eagle magazines, and he was a fantastic, he was an ace, you know, always stories. So
So that got you interested. Did you read about Richthofen and all those guys with the Lafayette Escadrille and everything?
they weren't, I don't recall.
Yeah,
I don't know if they were well known at that time even,
yeah.
but because that was before World War II, it was after World War I.
Well, I take it you liked the Stearman. It must have been fun to fly as a plane.
It was unbelievable. Those were some of the best days I can remember. Yeah, anyway, we had 90 hours, and then we were sent to Lemoore, California, to basic training. Now, I can tell you some of the most fun, interesting stories of things we used to do at Lemoore. I mean, back at Tulare, flying these the Stearmans. There was a lake, and I can't remember what lake it was, but oh, incidentally, we would take off from the main airdrome. But then they had made little airstrips. I forget what they called them. You remember any of?
Not really.
Like an emergency strip or something? Or?
They're like a second level airstrip.
Practice fields.
Yeah, where we would land, and then the next student that's going to use the plane would take it over and take off. And they didn't have radio at that time in those planes. They had radio, but not in the planes. And so we would always wait at the ready point and wait for the control truck to shoot the light beam at us in, you know, red, green, and so on. So you get the green light, you can get it. But we have to always check the mags. We would stop and turn 45 degrees to the takeoff, and then check our magnetos to make sure
Run up and then check mags, yeah.
Yeah. And then we'd take off. So we would land out in these outlying strips and secondary strips, I'll call them. I can't remember. I'll when I walk out of here, I'll
It'll come to
remember. Anyway, they had all kinds of fields of crops and things. And they had watermelons and muskmelons and grapes for wine and all kinds of things. But as we were sitting out there, then the bus would come and pick us up and take us back to the main place. And then we wait until we go back to the main field at Tulare. But while we were waiting for one of the guys to come in with the Stearman and turn it over to us, we used to, once in a while, pick a small watermelon or something and put it in the cockpit, or have it with us and put it in the cockpit. We'd drive over this lake and come in, and we had this thing in our lap, and we'd roll over and try to bomb something on the lake.
Did you ever hit anything?
We never waited to find out, because that could have been a washout for us. Anyway, we got into Lemoore, California, and that was a Vultee. And you'll remember what you called them, don't you?
Vultee vibrator.
That's right.
Yeah, vibrant, yeah.
Vultee vibrator. I never remembered that it was such a bad vibrator, but
Yeah.
it was a low wing, but fixed
Landing gear?
wheels.
Yeah.
Landing gear. And then it was more of a military type plane, I guess, but, and wide, oh, I gotta tell you, the Stearman, we never realized it. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
The landing gear was very narrow, and the lower wing was closed, and that would give you lots of weight. I don't know it, but I don't recall anybody in my time there that there was any, what do we call it?
Ground loop?
Ground loops.
Yeah.
That I recall. But a crosswind could really throw you into a ground loop, and then you'd really have a problem. That's when you come into land. But anyway, the Vultee, was it BT?
Well, there was a BT-13 they made a lot of, and there was
That
a
was it.
15 later, but it was a
Yeah.
bigger engine, I think, and I don't know that they made as many of those. So it was probably a 13, I would think.
I think so. And it was a wide, never any problem at all. You could probably close your eyes and come in.
Mhm.
And we did instrument flying, all kinds of things. I remember, I don't know if it was, no, it couldn't have been Tulare. I was thinking of, we had to go one flight in the dark, take off at night. And, but I think that was advanced. But we didn't have any radio. Well, we had radio. I don't know if we had it in the Vultee or not, but we had it in
I think they
the
put them in
advanced.
there, I don't know.
No, the AT-6.
So you had to be aware of all the airplanes and everything around
yeah.
you, because there wasn't any, other than your visual,
That's
there wasn't
right.
any way to avoid like running into somebody, because
Yeah.
there wasn't radio and all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went through, I don't know how many hours on basic, in the Vultee.
What did you think of that plane flying?
I thought it was, boy, the neatest thing since sliced bread. But, you know, that was a
Yeah.
step up. And then we came to advanced, and that was at Luke Field, Phoenix, Arizona. And that was folding ground undercarriage.
Yeah.
And it was also, I think the propeller was
Variable speed.
variable
Yeah.
speed. And that was entirely different.
So this is the AT-6 Texan?
AT-6 Navy was SNJ, I think. And they had AT-6s in the Korean War, I think, didn't they?
They were still using them, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, did you hit a button and the landing gear came up, or did you have to crank it, or how
No,
did
no,
that
no,
work?
no, it came up. I think we had to pull a lever or something on the, down on the bottom of the cockpit.
But you had to remember to bring it up and put it down before you came back down.
Oh, if you, when we, if you pull the throttle, boy, all this is coming back to me now, and I don't know if I've thought about it ever since. If you cut the throttle without that landing gear down, a horn went off in the cockpit.
Yeah, I think so, you're right.
And
Did the other later planes you flew, like the P-47, have that feature, or was that something they designed for training?
I can't remember that.
Yeah,
By that time, we were
you know how to do the
so
land, yeah.
programmed. But we used to, I'll tell you later if we have time or something, how we used to come in from a combat flight, and if you're leading a flight of 4 would come in. It was always a single strip. And you know, if you hadn't lost any planes or had to come back early because of rough engine or something, you'd have 16 planes in a squadron, 4 flights of 4. And they would come in at that single strip, and we'd come in, maybe, I don't know, maybe 500 feet on the final approach, and come in under pretty good throttle, and just shoot at the beginning of the strip, and then pull up, and the lead plane would come up like that under, and when I used to bring in a flight, it was under full throttle and high RPM. In other words, low pitch. And I was full throttle and swinging around fast because you had to come around, and I never was aware of anybody ever stalling out. But I remember I used to be pulling that in, and I wasn't using trim taps or anything. I was just pulling it in, coming around fast, because you have to come around and get on the strip and then grease it on if you could, if you were that good.
Yeah.
Remember, it was tricycle landing gear, and put it down and keep rolling for a bit. By that time, of course, just before touching, you pull your throttle, and because you got 3 other guys coming around, but it was what you call a bombshell peel off, and those 2nd, 3rd, and 4th would swing way out. The 4th guy was way out there coming around. He was the last guy down. But you'd have 4 planes rolling on a strip, and they had to get them down so they could bring in another flight.
Well, that was a very efficient way to do it, that military
Oh, yeah.
method of doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It must have been kind of exciting to come in and do that,
I
too.
loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever I was bringing a flight in personally, I loved it, but I've thought in the past how close I was to a stall. And I don't know if you ever get into a stall, if you're that close, if you can recover, because you're under full throttle then where you can go for more.
Yeah.
But I never was aware of any losses.
Now, they did this when you're you're advanced and also when you're in the military.
We were in something called, I think it was transitional, or there was another word. When we got to, I'm jumping around now.
Yeah. Well, let's take the Luke Field. That was, you said in Phoenix. Was that named after that World War I aviator, do you know, Luke?
I wasn't aware,
Oh,
but I got news for you. About 5-6 years ago, I went back to Luke Field, and I was treated like a visiting statesman. But I gotta tell you how, and maybe another time, I don't know, but that was a wonderful experience for me.
yeah, we'll definitely come back to that at
All right.
at the post-war period.
But, and that was way, way back. I even was put into one of the very exclusive ground, not a real plane, but I flew, took off, flew it around and landed an F-16.
Wow.
But one of the, what you call it,
One of the trainer types?
it wasn't a
something?
trainer, it wasn't off the ground.
Mhm.
It was the
Simulator?
simulator.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to AT-6s. That was really good flying. It was wonderful. And the last 10, I imagine it had to be about close to 90 or 100 hours. And, but, so that was a number of months, 4 or 5 months or so at Luke Field. But the last 10 hours was, if you made it through and you weren't washed out, it wasn't in an AT-6. It was in a P-40.
Mhm.
The, what do they
The
call it?
Warhawk?
Warhawk. Yeah, Curtiss Warhawk.
What was that plane like to fly?
Well, it was an experience, and I gotta tell you that I went to sleep for, a month to a month and a half. Every night before I'd go to sleep, I'd be thinking about taking off that P-40 because it's a single plane, or a single
Seat.
single-seater, and you don't have an instructor with you teaching you how to handle that, and that's a pretty busy cockpit.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff in there, and the training we got on it was all one-to-one with an instructor, and most of the time with, let's say, when I was doing it, when I had my instruction sessions, I was in the cockpit and the instructor was standing on the wing, leaning over and pointing and telling me what to do. And I remember that I remembered. I don't exactly recall, but I think we were taught at the tail end of it that he was firing names of instruments and buttons and levers, and it was, I seem to remember that we had to have a blindfold test, and I can't remember actually doing it or anything, but I think it was. And he would say altimeter, and you had to touch it, and airspeed indicator, you had to touch it, and I can't remember all the different instruments, and switches and so on.
So they wanted you to be able to find those things blindfolded.
Well, you had to,
Yeah,
you
know
had
where
to
they
be
were.
flying, and you have to do it. Whether you see it first or look after, you gotta get it.
yeah.
And there was a lot of thought going through my head. Boy,
Well, you must have had a good memory, and was it similar to the AT-6, or were they kind of moved around when you got to
I
the
can't
P-40?
remember.
Yeah,
it couldn't have been, well, I imagine altimeters and airspeed indicators and
But they could be in different places on the different panels.
Yeah.
I wonder, I don't recall that they were standardized, but maybe they were.
Well, for instrument flying, you got your 6 basic instruments that you have to, look at one and then the other when you're flying.
Yeah,
And those are supposed to be clustered together.
yeah.
But I don't know that they were back then, in 1940.
I can't tell you, but I used to think, God, all alone, and I wonder if I'll make it.
if you screw up, you're on your own, then if you're up in there.
I had thoughts.
Yeah.
Didn't you say before flying the P-40, the night before you had trouble sleeping because you were worried about having to fly that plane solo?
Well, I don't recall if I had trouble sleeping. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep
Yeah.
because I don't remember that I was bleary-eyed. But that's not an air-cooled. It was a
Water cooled?
water-cooled engine, inline engine, and long. And that had a long nose, and of course tail wheel. And they couldn't. I don't think you would S as you went down the
Taxiway?
taxiway. But they had, I do recall, I think, a ground crew sitting on the wing as we taxied out. But you had to taxi fast because those engines, they told us, would load up and stall out.
But they
Overheat too. because
overheat
it wasn't-
too, yeah.
Okay, so we had to taxi pretty fast, but there was always a, what do they call it, a vehicle there to pick them up off the wing.
Oh, so he's sitting on the wing, and you're watching him, and he's watching the mistake you don't run
Yeah,
into somebody.
he's steering us,
Yeah. Yeah.
or me. So it was a pretty straight shot down the taxiways without S-ing. And I got there, and they don't leave you long, I guess. I got the signal, and I can't remember if it was a light or a audible or a voice.
You probably had radios in them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that there was radio in it, and so I got the signal, and I headed down the runway and did my throttle thing, and got airspeed, got the tail up, and then I just gingerly lifted it. God, I had it. I got left, and then I was airborne. And man, I was just, oh, this is something. Wow, and that was power that I never had before. And I was up there, and I was doing things. I was out. They had me for an area, so I was out in this area and enjoying myself immensely, but worried all the time because I gotta bring this son of a gun down. I'm saying it nice.
So it was like a couple thousand horsepower or something, wasn't it, on those big engines?
Oh, it was power.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. It was
They
so
had
wonderful.
Allison engines and
Uh-huh.
Well, yeah, I think it
Allison.
was. Anyway, but I got that down. And then,
did you have to make one of them fast turn landings where you had to peel in? Or did you come
Oh,
in
no,
just,
no,
just
no.
gradual?
You just come in downwind, come onto a basic leg, and then turn on
Turn
final
on,
approach,
yeah.
and just straight in. That's what we did. The only time we did that bombshell peel off was in combat in a T-boat.
Yeah.
And that was an engine.
They still do it today, anytime a formation of 4 planes.
Yeah.
They don't do it near the ground, they do it at pattern altitude, where the first plane peels off real fast, and the second one goes a little bit further out.
Bombshell.
Yeah, so they're all come across landing a little
But-
further apart than
Yeah,
this in
but-
formation.
That's the purpose of the spreading out.
Now, did they give you bullets or anything, or were you still firing guns when you're flying the P-40?
I fired guns, or a .30 caliber machine gun mounted on the cowling on an AT-6 at is it Gila Bend, Arizona? I think so. First time I've said that. Gila Bend, Arizona, in an AT-6. We had gunnery training. And
And this fired right through the propeller?
synchronized.
Yeah.
And I was amazed being told about it, but not worried. Because they'd been doing it, so I presume they found out it works. But that was interesting. But then we graduated. I put in 10 hours in the Warhawk, and then I got a leave, a 2-week leave or something. After I got my wings, I became a first lieutenant or a second lieutenant. I had to resign as an enlisted man.
Oh.
At the same time, I was given my bars and my wings.
Now, I assume, do they have like a ceremony and they present the wings?
Absolutely.
And this is at the end of your sort of pilot training in terms
At
of...
the end of that,
Yeah.
10 hours at the tail end of my AT-6 training, advanced.
So you had had 10 hours in an actual warplane at that point?
You bet.
Yeah.
But no armament. And then I went to, I got leave, and then I had to report to Abilene, Texas for, I'm trying to remember if it was called transitional or there was another word, and I can't come up with it. But we by then I was an officer, really important. I couldn't vote. and
Did you get a raise, or do you remember what you're getting paid?
No,
or
but
anything?
yeah, I got more money.
Yeah.
And at Abilene, when we first got on the flight line, I was a little bit dismayed. I wasn't as happy as I could have been, because I was, excuse me, I was, this was, we'd always talk amongst ourselves about the real planes to have and what, and that P-50 or that P-51 was really supposedly the plane. Wow. And the Mustang. And but these were big, heavyweight looking things. But what am I going to do?
What
Here
was
I
it?
am.
What kind of plane was it?
Thunderbolt.
P-47?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted that for the record.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. No, I So I was assigned to a Thunderbolt and for eventual deployment to Europe. And I didn't think too much about it, but here's a guy with a last name of Lieberman, going to fly over Nazi Germany in a single engine plane with a parachute, big deal. But anyway, when I first got into the plane, we were, I suppose, and I can't remember too much, but we had a little bit of cockpit time to get ourselves familiarized. By that time, we knew where the things were and what we had to do, and it was sort of like the Warhawk, but a different kind of plane. But it wasn't, yeah, it's a bit bigger, but it wasn't, and heavier, much heavier, but, and with more power. But it wasn't that big a change. And we felt we were in charge when we got in the cockpit, not wondering, my God, can I get this off and then get it back down?
Mm-hmm. So you were pretty well prepared by this sequence of planes moving all the way up to
fantastic. That's America.
Good
that's
training.
The U.S.
Did you have instrument training by this time?
Say again?
Could you be an instrument pilot at this time?
Oh yeah, we had quite a bit of instrument training in the BT of the
Oh, BT-13?
the Vultee. But we flew quite a lot of time out of Abilene, Texas, and getting really familiar with the T-Bolt, Thunderbolt. But then we went down to, and I don't remember if we flew planes down or ended up being transported down, and with planes already there, to Palacios, and I think that's
Palacios,
Texas.
Texas, yeah.
Okay. So we went down there, and that was for gunnery training. I'd never, and there are 8 50 caliber machine guns, 4 in each wing, and I'll show you pictures of those wings. And I'd never fired the guns. And I remember the first time I came in on a pass, and there was I think a captain or a first lieutenant flying a TBF, a Navy plane, a torpedo bomber, which would take off from the strip down in Palacios with a long cable and then a
tow target?
tow target. And it had to be, oh, I don't know, a couple of blocks or longer, long. But so then we took off, and we got out to the established area, and it was out in the real boonies. Oh no, this was over
Over the ocean.
over the ocean.
Yeah.
We did fire, yeah. I won't,
They didn't want you hitting any civilians
no,
with bullets.
real bullets.
Yeah.
And so we and I remember this meeting we had, this briefing with this this officer that was towing the target, and all of our ammunition, all of our rounds were tipped with paint. So if we got any hits, it actually left a mark. So he would know who was shooting or whatever. afterwards when they analyzed. So I remember coming in, I don't know what flight or what part of the flight I was on, but I remember it was my turn and I came in on about a 90 degree and banked around and came in and drew a little bit of a bead with a little lead on it and then squeezed the trigger. And that was an experience because here's a unbelievably heavy plane, 50-foot wingspan, and that engine alone is the weight of a semi-loaded. It's an R2800 Pratt & Whitney 2,000 horsepower engine. And we're coming in under some pretty good throttle. And then when I squeezed that trigger, 850s went off, and it actually, I felt it slow me down.
Yeah, the recoil, wow.
And there was a lot of airplane going, but that was quite an experience. After that, it was just normal, usual.
Well, that's an incredible amount of firepower to shoot 850 caliber guns simultaneously.
Absolutely. And
Did you hit the target?
I can't remember.
I missed the plane at least?
I don't think so, but he said there better not be any long streaks of paint on that target. He didn't want to shoot him, you know, right tail on.
Yeah, because it hit him.
Yeah.
All we would do would be come in. But then we had we carried now the T-bolt, we could carry 1,000-pound high explosive bomb under each wing on an external shackle. And we could have carried another 1,000-pound under a belly shackle, but it wouldn't clear the ground. So we could only carry a 500 there.
Wow.
That's how much power we had.
My brother said that twice over there they carried 2,000-pound bombs on the wings, and with a extra tank, and they used water injection to get off the ground.
Yeah, we had water injection, and that's another thing about that engine. It was unbelievable. and we used to take hits in our engine, and as long as you didn't get the main engine, but if we got a hit on a cylinder, we could come back.
That's an amazing
Yeah.
feature that,
Yep.
huh?
And we actually had that happen because we used to do a lot of strafing. See, there was so much firepower in that plane, and it was designed as a high altitude escort plane. But out of 74 fighter missions, I only had 4 that were set up as escort. We got in some aerial combat, but only what we were doing as mostly actually in armed reconnaissance, where we were given a quadrant of area to go out and just take care of anything and everything we could find. And that's when we once in a while got jumped. And I actually shot down 2 German fighters on one mission. But we didn't get into many dogfights.
Palacios, Texas, from that point, did you go to England, or what was the next phase?
We had one thing. We also had dive bombing. And we had it was I think 100-pound dummy bomb with sand in it or something on a belly shackle. And they had a building, oh, it was probably 40 feet wide, like just a build up to a point building, wooden. And it was painted red or something, and we would take passes at it with his bomb. And I was the only guy in our, that they I don't know if anybody ever else did it, but I came in and slammed it.
You hit the building.
I smacked the building.
Yeah. How do you do a dive bombing? Do you come down pretty straight on it, or?
Well, what we used to do in real combat, we'd come over usually at about, roughly 10,000 and roll over and come down on a split S. But because when you do that, you can see where you're going, and now you're coming in on it, and you can, try to get your sights. Or we didn't use bomb sights or anything. It was just
Visual?
yeah, just the gut feel. And the best way to do it is just come in, just like you're cutting grass, and just let her go, and then peel off, usually at an angle. And don't head too high, because all the machine guns and 20 millimeters are sitting around all over where you're after, because we're not going after anything that doesn't have armament usually.
Yeah.
And you don't want to give height, because now you're ascending deck, so we would do all kinds of things.
So when you come in that low, do you like throw the bomb up and then it lands, or it just drops off the bottom shackle?
Well, it's flying at a hell of a speed.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to stop it. Usually, I would call it drive bombing.
Drive bombing.
You're just slamming it in.
Yeah. So you got pretty good at the dive bombing with the practice, it sounds like, compared to the other guys.
You got to have a gut feel.
Yeah.
When I shot down that second plane, there were 3 others in the flight that had taken passes and missed them. And I saw how they were all doing it, and I just backed way around and came around like that, and then I pulled lead. And we had a parallax, anti-parallax or something, sight that we would use. It was projected up onto a reflection unit or something, and straight onto us. So if you're looking this way or that way, it doesn't take you off of, if you're trying to put a dot on something, if I move my head like that, I moved my finger from the window over to the wall, and you're not going to hit anything.
And this, through the reflection, would take care of the parallax?
Yes,
Huh.
and it gave you a ring. And I remembered my training of how to shoot. And I just came in on this guy. It was a Messerschmitt. And I came in on him, and I pulled through him, and I brought a full ring past him. And then I squeezed, and just poured the 850s right into the tail. And he flamed.
Well,
I didn't have any camera at that time, because
huh.
I'd already gotten the first one and followed it all the way down, and it was a goner. Evidently, he might have bailed out, because I followed them and gave them squirts all the way,
Yeah.
and I used up my camera.
Now,
My-
could
my
you,
film.
could you, turn the camera, so it's just
No.
camera without the guns firing, or was it
No,
always
no.
whenever the guns are firing?
It's the only way they would, it was a little, right inside the inner part of the, I think the right wing, little window. And, I guess it's 50 feet of film, it was 16 millimeter. And, so that was quite a picture, that one.
Yeah. Did you get credit on the second?
I'll
Without
tell you
the
what
film?
I did. When we had to come to our, what do we call it?
Debriefing?
Yeah, the debriefing. Our two officers that were assigned to our squadron, I forgot what they were, G2 or something like that. Before we did, I said to one of the guys, I said, "You've never gotten a plane, have you?" As I remember, I think I'll remember his name one of these days. I said, "Why don't you claim one?" I gave it to him.
Yeah. And he was a G2 intelligence,
No, another guy on the flight.
Oh, okay.
I said, "You know what, I'll just claim one and you claim the other."
Yeah.
But now, the Thunderbolt is not an aerobatic plane,
No.
and you don't want to do a roll on it because it dishes like there's no tomorrow. But all the way back, I was thinking, should I or shouldn't I? Should I or shouldn't I? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
You,
victory roll. Victory roll.
victory roll.
So what did you decide?
I'm gonna do it. And when we came in, I pulled out of the flight and went back, and I think I started about 5,000 and full throttle, and I came in right at the touchdown and really blasting. And I pulled up, and I think I did my roll on about a 30 degree upward. And this guy did too, because I got just up, and just before I felt like I was going to start to run out of power, I did my roll. I came around. It dished, but I had plenty of room. I came around, and then I came around. We always came around to the left, and then I came around and landed.
Now, when you do that, does the stuff on the floor all fly up and,
No.
or?
No,
yeah.
because you're, we didn't have anything on the floor. I
Yeah.
mean, even cigarette butts.
It was a clean floor on your plane.
Yeah. Anyway.
I'm going to take a moment.
That cost
Yeah, go ahead.
me, had I just claimed what I really did, everybody on the flight knew it, but nobody said anything, and he claimed a kill. But had I not done that, I would have been a captain.
What were the planes? Was it a ME-109 or something?
I think that was a Messerschmitt, but the first one, I can't tell you. I think it was FW.
Yeah. I suppose the movie would show, or the film, combat film.
Yeah,
you could
it
figure
probably
it out
does.
from that. Oh, go ahead. What, you were.
We were tapped by our operations officer, hey, Lieberman, and two other guys. When the mail plane comes through, and those were, what they call DC-3s?
Yeah.
Get on and they'll drop you off at Villacoublay Airport in Paris. And you'll pick up 3 replacement planes, because we'd lose planes all the time. Or not all the time, but we'd lose them. And so we had to pick up some planes. So we did that, and we had our duffel or rucksack over our shoulder or something, and we were told, take with you a carton of cigarettes, and if you got a bunch of chocolate bars that you get, and any silk stocking. We didn't have that stuff.
Yeah, silk stockings.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't GI issue at the time.
Not as I recall. And when we got to and checked in, we're told to pick up the planes. And I don't recall if it was early in the day or late in the day, but we had to sign off some papers and get all set. Then they, I was trying to think of a weapons carrier. That's what they all the guys around.
Okay.
So they took us out to the planes, and we climbed in and checked them. But as I recall, it was all planned ahead. I think this engine sounds a little rough. You better have the technical people check them out again. I'm not real comfortable with it or something like that. Whatever it was, we got to stay over.
In Paris.
Yeah, it was shortly after after Paris was liberated. So I was walking around not far away from where we were billeted for a night, and I was walking down this little rue or this avenue, and I walked by a little shop, a camera shop, and I had a camera, 35 millimeter, when I was in school, and I really enjoyed it. I did a lot of special shooting and everything with it. So I walked in, and it was evidently shortly after liberation, and they started up again, and it was a middle-aged, nice fellow. I recall we communicated all right, but maybe they knew English or something, I don't know. But it was him and his wife, and here I was in uniform and wings and the whole thing, but I had this bag over my shoulder. And I said something like, do you have a little 35 millimeter? He showed me one, an early one, not like we have today. Mm-hmm. And I said, how much? And he said, well, and I reached into my sack, and I don't recall actually using money. He got a good deal and I got a good deal. And he gave me a paper bag. I needed film. I must have had 20, 25 rolls.
Wow.
of I don't know how big a roll, like probably 24s or something, of black and white film. And I came back to the squadron, and that's this right here.
Well, that's quite a thick book there. It looks like you took a lot of photos.
And that photo, this photo, was taken with my little picture.
Oh, yeah,
One of the other
yeah.
guys, when we were down on a flak leaf in Cannes. That's where the film festival is.
Yeah.
But not then, of course.
Yeah.
And it was still, Germany hadn't capitulated, I don't think. But I had my good dress outfit with me.
Well, you were a handsome guy, and you had like an Eisenhower jacket. It looked like a short one.
Yeah.
Huh.
It was tans and Eisenhower jacket.
A lot of dark hair there too in that picture.
Oh, really? And
That's an excellent picture. It's very sharp detail and
yeah.
wow.
And it was a good little camera. I think I've got it someplace in my house yet. And I'll show you some things. So I kept that. And when I was down there in Cannes for 10 days, and guess what happened? Germany threw in the sponge.
Oh, so that was right at the end of the war.
Okay.
Yeah,
That was some party.
yeah, I'll bet. People were pretty happy to get
Pretty
get
happy
it all
to
done.
be,
Can you imagine that guy with all of the stuff there?
Yeah.
but how did you get the time off? How did they give you time off
Oh,
during the war?
We could get, that's a first and only flak leave I had. But the war was still on when it had to be given by our doctor, Doc Finn. And I got to tell you about Doc Finn. He was our flight surgeon. Each squadron had their own doctor, and he took care of us. And you'll never guess. Well, yes, you will, because you guys are all Army people or military people, and you know how the military thinks.
Or sometimes.
Or doesn't.
Oh, okay, so you tell me, and what kind of specialty was Doc Finn in civilian life before he decided to join the military?
A vet or something, I don't know. Was he
Well, you're,
general
that-
practitioner or something? Or
Psychologist.
a gynecologist?
Yeah, gynecologist.
he was,
Just gonna say that.
Took the words out of your mouth.
they
figures.
called him OB men at that time.
Yeah, yeah. So he was delivering babies and then he went into the military or something?
To take care of all these guys.
Yeah,
And I used to love to pose all the guys. I got everybody together in the whole squadron, the ground crews and everybody, and I don't know who took the camera, but I got a picture in here of the whole squadron. And we were over in France, so we didn't have nice buildings like England.
you were in what, tents or something?
I spent one winter in a tent. They were built up, you know, we built a wooden floor and framework because there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 cots in that tent, a potbelly stove and a little chimney going out. And
Did it work or was it like really extremely cold in there?
there was snow on the ground.
Yeah,
In fact, you'll see me, I got a picture in here of, it was during the Germany's, when they broke through it was a
bulge?
Bastogne,
Yeah.
the bulge.
Yeah.
And we then had to wear armament. We had to carry a .45 pistol on our belt all the time, everything. And
so you weren't very far from the front.
Oh, no.
You were just behind the front.
they moved us, and we we were, I would say, time-wise, maybe 10, 15 minutes from the bomb line.
Wow.
That's not far.
No, it depends on how it was moving, but it was Patton, and he would, if they broke through anything, and they were told to just get to a certain point, didn't mean anything. If they got going, keep going, hell bent for election.
Yeah.
And boy, that's, you remember the Remagen bridgehead? I was on flying top cover, and I flew strafing down on it because
Wow.
the Germans,
Yeah.
see, they couldn't blow it up. I remember then when they scrambled us.
So did you help then to keep them from blowing up
Yeah.
that by
Well,
keeping away from
whether
them?
it was me or any of another 50 or 60, because they scrambled everything they could, I guess.
Yeah.
But I can tell you some funny stories, fun stories, where when I first got over, when we first landed and started flying the missions out of England, we were in England first, out of France, it was the strip A-27, and I'm trying to remember, but it was in the
Was it in Normandy or something?
Normandy.
Yeah.
Peninsula or something, in Brest Harbor, B-R-E-S-T, Harbor.
Yeah.
And there was the Navy had bottled up a German, different kind of ship, not a small destroyer, a bigger one.
Like a cruiser or
A
something?
cruiser, a German cruiser. They had come in, there was a couple of German battalions or something dug in on Brest Harbor. And they kept us there at A-27 near Rennes, R-E-N-N-E-S. And because we were flying missions, strafing over the what are those, the
Like the break walls or something, or?
well, there were plant growths,
Oh, hedgerows.
hedgerows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were that low.
We were coming in over the hedgerows and
Yeah.
strafing, and trying to get those guys out. And there was this cruiser that came in to supply the either regiment or battalion or whatever they are. And so our fighter group, all three squadrons, the 362nd Fighter Group, was in there to support the military maneuvers on Brest Harbor. So we were flying dive bombing and strafing missions. Or I mean, we were doing those missions. And, and there was, they used to call us the Brazier Brigade because we supported Brest.
Okay. I should ask you, just
That makes sense.
so I've got it. So you were in the 362nd
sense.
Fighter Group, and what was the squadron? You were
379th,
79th, and that's 9th Air Force.
9th Air Force.
And you were there, did you arrive in France right after the initial landings, or when did we kind of jumped over how you got from Texas to England? Did you first go to England, or you fly
Yeah,
there? Or?
I was flown over on a, I think it's a C-54.
Okay.
I rode, we were a lot of us, and we landed at Prestwick, Scotland.
Mm-hmm. How did your planes get over there? Did they have a?
I can't remember if
Some
we
kind of-
took off and landed there or what. We didn't go on boat, so it had to be by air, and I can't remember. I have no
I
recollection.
think they were all put together over there.
Oh.
The fighters were.
They'd assemble them over on the,
Yeah.
oh. So you ended up in Scotland first, and then did you have a base or something?
We were based at, it was called, there was a sort of a, not a real mountain, but it was a big, I can't tell you right now. It might come back to me. I'll call you in the middle of the night.
Like a high cliff or high point. It was,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
called the Rican. And
How do you spell that? Rican?
I'm guessing R-E-E-K-E-N or something.
Oh, okay.
But it was, I think it starts with R, the city. But it was in the Midlands. And it was, but I remember just a few missions, and then all of a sudden, the breakthrough came. And from then on, our next base after, what did I say?
Rican?
No, I mean,
England?
in the
Ren?
Rennes, R-E-N-N-E-S. After Rennes, we were moved to Reims, R-H-E-I-M-S, the Champagne capital of the world.
Very famous in World War I also as a, as a base for airplanes.
Yes, and we were billeted in a chateau, a wine chateau, but we had cots on the upstairs levels, in the halls and everything. I mean, you know, it wasn't elegant, and we had in their main dining room, I have some pictures of it, but it's big tables that they made out of lumbers and so on. But they fed us, and but the guys, we could have a bottle of champagne ourselves each night.
Well, you're right in the center of the Champagne country
yeah.
there then. Now, this would have been after the breakout in Normandy.
Oh,
and then,
yeah.
Where was the front lines? Were they going towards Germany at that point when you were at Reims?
Evidently, yeah. And we would have a briefing in the morning, and they would show us on the maps and everything where the bomb line is.
Yeah.
But we would come, and our tanks, Patton's tanks, would have panels, color panels on the top, so we don't attack them. But boy, they would break through and they would keep going. They wouldn't stop where they were planning to stop.
Well, that was very effective. That's what the Germans had done early in the war, is they'd break through and then just go as fast as you could go. And the consequences of that on the ground is that it just demoralized everybody that was on the other end.
They were just trying to get away from that on.
Yeah.
Did you arrive in there in 44 then, or over in England?
Yeah.
So you arrived before the D-Day invasion or after? And
I can't remember.
well, let's see.
I'm trying to put things together and I just
Yeah.
don't have it.
Well, it'd be June 6th for the Normandy invasion, but you're being at Rennes and dealing with Brest. You were probably part of the Normandy campaign. That was a...
We didn't, I wasn't in on the flying over the invasion,
Yeah.
but I was flying over the bridgehead.
Well, it was...
And I flew over Bastogne,
oh,
the bulge, and I remember clearly on that. We came in at about a little over 10,000 feet, and we knew where the target area was, and we were looking for the Germans that were around the edge of where Bastogne itself was centered, and we came down and we lost quite a bit because there was so much armament, German armament, and they were just pouring all this stuff up in the air. And the squadron leader, I went down and I tried to drop my bomb and it was stuck or something. So I would have to go back up and try again, but this time use a manual release. And he called and he says, don't go down again, because they already lost a few planes coming down, because they were just pouring it up. And so he says, just drop it on the straight and narrow. So I dropped it, otherwise I probably wouldn't be here.
Now, Bastogne had, I think, a period where it was really overcast and there wasn't a lot of airplanes flying, and then it cleared up, and then they said the airplanes were critical to getting to winning, the winning that part of the Battle of the Bulge. So this would have been, was the things going on the ground being told to you? Did you know, like, that there was a surrounded group of 101st or whatever paratroopers?
I don't remember what our what do we call it? Our briefing was about. I can't remember how much we were told, but we had a target area, evidently. Whenever we took off, we did.
Could you see on the ground like an individual soldier, or was it just like tanks or something?
Sometimes we could, you betcha. Well, tanks, oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember one time on an armed recce, and this was either before or after the Bulge, we came in, and I remember coming down on an area. For some reason, we were coming down for a purpose to hit something, and there were like what is it, a regiment or a battalion or just a major group of soldiers running across the field.
Wow, and you could see all of that from the air. Yeah. When you would drop a bomb.
You know what I did?
No.
You strafed them.
I came in right across the grass in Fishtail.
Wow.
So you could get more.
With 850s.
Yeah.
It bothers me to think of it.
Yeah. Probably got a lot of German soldiers that day.
Well, knowing what they did, putting people to death in gas chambers and everything, I guess I don't care much, but those people that were told to go out and fight didn't want to fight anyway, I'll bet you.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Well, it's a terrible thing to have a war, but there's probably been no war we've ever been in that was more important to win than the Second World War.
I think so.
And we only found out some of the stuff afterward about how bad things were there.
Did you happen to fly over Market Garden that campaign?
The what?
Market Garden, where the paratroopers tried to take them bridges
In Holland.
in Holland?
No, I don't think so. No. My plane was Q, so I just called it Queenie.
Queenie, okay.
Did you have any?
My brother called his plane Jane. His wife's name was Jane, so he got Plain Jane.
Well, I didn't meet my wife until well after.
Yeah.
Was it after the war?
Yeah.
We took a trip to the new Smithsonian Air and Space Museum at Dulles Airport, and we went in there, and there's a plane underneath the Enola Gay that was from Myron's brother's squadron.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Beautiful
P-47 or P-51?
47.
I'm going to show you guys something right now.
That's a checkerboard.
All of this is from a 35 mil. You know what a 35 millimeter negative is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And one day, I'll bet it's maybe 8 years ago now, we had a model sitting right in the middle of the window there, or the wall there. And I had shot some pictures. These pictures were only, maybe the size of that cartridge, or maybe a little bigger, but not much, some of them. Black and white. and I put it on that machine and shot him up to this. That's what this was.
Oh,
He said it's so
yeah.
good.
That's your machine here, right? This
Well, not
copier?
this one. It was about 8 years ago.
Okay.
Okay.
But I'm gonna show you something. You wanna see something?
Yeah.
I not only blew it up to this, but watch. And this was after Germany capitulated, but before Japan. And we were over there and we were just flying just to keep our planes in the air and to show people that we're still there or something. I'm gonna show you something. Look at this.
Wow, beautiful. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Look at that.
And guess what? There was another plane that you can't see.
Great and that was with your 35 millimeter?
And the plane you can't see is me.
Gee,
You were in front of that formation.
Yeah?
you can almost see their face.
Yeah,
Isn't that
good
amazing?
that
quality?
is really nice.
It's really something.
You had one heck of a good buy there with that camera. And you still have it. I suppose it's hard to get film anymore for
35 millimeter.
cameras.
I don't know where it is, but I know
Yeah.
it's gotta be in my house.
And you got it for the
You had
package?
the white,
The cowling was painted white on your plane or your
No.
squadron?
Yeah, yes, my plane was the same as this.
white.
This wasn't my plane.
No.
Yeah.
I took this. We were flying over it. We were at,
But there was.
down in southern Bavaria.
Okay. Yeah, you'd be more south if you were with Pattons.
I got one plane in here. You can see the tip of my wing. That's how close he was now.
That's a tight formation. How close did you guys normally fly? Was it a finger four formation or how did you usually fly around?
There was a flight of 4, and the wingman to the leader would be on, I can't tell you whether he was on the left, and then the
Finger 4 is like this. This is the lead guy. And there's one on the left and 2 on the right.
that's the way we did.
Boy, you got some great pictures.
God, it's amazing. There you go.
That was me.
That's your wing.
You got one with all the other planes behind you though too. You got a nice one with the planes in formation.
Now the mountains are where? Those the Alps or something?
Bavarian Alps.
Yeah.
Straubing on the Danube. Those are
Well, you can
mountains.
see the machine gun sticking out there pretty good from
Yeah.
the wings, can't you?
Yeah, there's one just right at the edge.
Yeah.
I took those pictures.
You could take well,
My-
let's
my
see, you
hand
had
was-
one hand on the, how'd you do it?
Well, it had to be left-handed.
Huh.
Because I don't think I was, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Couldn't you put it on autopilot? What about autopilot? You know what that is?
We didn't have an autopilot.
Oh, you didn't.
You were the pilot.
He was the auto.
I was the auto.
Now, how long would a mission be? I mean, when you're flying?
Well, on some of them, I had, out of 74 missions, I had only 4 of them that were escort. And we escorted bombers. I can't even remember. I think they were light bombers.
Is that when you were in England or when you were in France?
France.
Was it? Okay.
Well, a gas would last how long? How many hours would the plane stay up in the air?
Well, we would have a belly tank
Okay.
and drop it.
Was it one of those metal ones, or was it
Yeah,
a,
metal.
it wasn't the paper mache thing that they came up with later for P-51s?
Really?
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
something where they were dropping the belly tank, and the Germans would recover the gasoline out of the belly tank because it was made out of metal. So they made one that was kind of flimsier.
Paper mache.
Yeah, it was basically
Yeah,
paper
well,
mache.
The aluminum, they wanted the aluminum too.
Yeah.
And so here we were feeding them aluminum, and we said, we gotta stop doing that. So
Yeah.
they went to paper mache.
Were you the one who told us this story?
No, Spook.
Oh,
Oh,
Spook told us, yeah.
yeah. You had regular aluminum tanks.
Yeah,
or-
that's all.
Yeah.
We're hoping that something would drop on one of them.
Well, the sequence then is you're in Prestwick, Scotland, and then you go to Rennes. No, Wrekin, was that next?
Well, did I say?
See, Scotland was not, you don't have the right towns
No,
for
no,
Scotland.
we only
Prestwick,
landed,
Scotland?
we only landed in Prestwick, Scotland.
Okay,
And then they drove us by bus to the Midlands.
okay, and that's called Wrekin? or
No,
pronounced-
that was that mountain.
Oh.
I think I mentioned it, didn't I?
Oh, yes, you had a name for it.
It'll come back to me.
And then the next was, they did the Normandy invasion, and then you were at Rennes.
Yeah.
And then to Reims?
No, not Rennes. Rennes, I was at, yes,
Yeah.
yes, it was Rennes.
Yeah, I should bring my maps. I got a bunch of maps of Normandy. You could probably identify exactly where these places
I had
are.
maps, and I had a whole lot of stuff stolen out of my basement.
Oh, really? Huh.
Oh, a book that was, I had, before I left, I had swastika flags and all kinds of stuff.
How about your film?
The film, I've got the little negatives with one of my sons now, he's keeping them.
No, I'm talking about the film from your plane.
Oh, I've looked for them, and I still have another place to look. They weren't in the basement.
This is your combat gun footage from the
Yeah.
wings. And then we just had Harold's put on DVD, you know, from the original film, and then of course that'll preserve it forever in theory because it's digitized. Yeah, that would be interesting to see.
Well, I've got,
Imagine you got a lot of strafing film there.
yeah, but you can't tell what we were after, I imagine. But you'll see a lot of groundwork, like on the picture tilting this way and that way, and
Yeah. Did it have the shooting down of the first German plane?
well, you can see the plane there, and you can see my tracers going out after it. But I just followed it down, and I was only getting burps of gunfire to keep the camera rolling, because I didn't think I was gonna have this other one.
Yeah.
But when I had a chance to take that one on, boy, that's a movie. It shows this as I was coming in on it, and then you could see the tracers and then the flames just exploded.
Wow.
But who knew? I don't know, maybe it's just as well.
Things happen fast in that time.
Yep.
And
Well, I've watched his brother's combat gun footage film, and it's like you're there, you know, when you look at that, because it's being taken in real time, and it's not like any other thing you see. It's not like a documentary. You're seeing the actual reality.
Well, I don't know if my film is any good.
Yeah.
People have said to me, if we open it up, it might be powder.
Well, what you found with his is that we brought it to a specialized place that dealt with older film, and then they did their whole thing, and they knew how to do it. And you know,
yeah,
it was usable. They could actually run it through a projector, but they had ways of doing it so it was safe.
They enhanced the film after they ran it.
I wouldn't under any I got 3 reels,
Yeah.
master reels. I wouldn't under any conditions give it to, or try running it, or
No,
give it to just anybody. I would
no.
double check and triple check, because,
That's exactly what we did, was we looked at it, and then the guy that was sort of in charge of it said, well, I'm not gonna do anything, and so he brought it to somebody that was a specialist in old films, and they have their ways of doing things, you know. He was concerned about the splices and stuff coming apart.
Yeah, 'cause
Yes,
that
that's
glue
right.
and stuff, they
Sure.
just powder.
oh, they would add to it each
Yeah.
time.
Well, how did this work? Did you brought the plane back, and then somebody on the ground crew would take the film out and then bring it to a
First,
photo?
they would clean the guns and rearm the plane, and take the film and send it to TAC headquarters. And then they would come back to our armament officer, who was actually a guy, a lieutenant from St. Paul. And anyway, the night before we were, and he would splice it. The night before we were leaving to come back for my 30-day leave here in the States, after Germany capitulated, after we had been flying around, we were in Straubing in Bavaria, and we were all sitting together in one of the guys' rooms or something, on a cot or on a bed or something, and in walks Lieutenant something or other, and he says, "Hey, you guys, I just came to say goodbye." And he walked in with his rucksack over his shoulder, and we thought, you know, he's just carrying something with him. And he said, "You guys are leaving tomorrow?" "Yeah, I think there were 3 of us going." He says, "Oh, okay." And he walks over to the bed, and he takes this and tips it upside down, and these, I don't know, about 9 canisters or something rolled out, and there they were. And my 3 with my name on it.
Now, these are like 6-inch reels? They're,
The canister is about this big, I think.
and you have 3 of those?
Yeah.
Wow.
See,
Well, I think he had
yeah,
one
I just
arrow.
had one, but he said they were gonna send him the other 2, and he never got them.
Well, he told us that we're not supposed to have them. This is the material. He says, this really belongs to the government, but I gotta tell you, I lost them. There they were.
Well,
While he was talking.
Yeah.
He
Well,
says, they're lost. So, here,
Yeah, he
guys.
said-
I think he said something like, "I think I got news for you, that your combat film has been lost." And then he dumped them or something.
Well, that was nice of him to give them to you,
Oh,
you know.
He probably did it for everybody.
Yeah.
We got a hard deadline, I think it's 4:15.
Oh,
We don't want
okay.
to go beyond that.
Well, Al, thank you so much.
Al.
I'm looking forward to the next time we can get together.
You know, you guys were just,
It's fun, I tell you. Every time I come over and visit with them, I'd always, when we were working together 30 years ago, I would say to Al, "Give me a war story." Throw one at me, you know. And every time I'd ask him, it was never the same story. It was always a new one. And that's what's fun.
These fighter pilots, they had a lot of war stories.
Yeah, they sure do.
Well, I'm glad we can get some of them recorded, and we'll get your kids and
Well,
grandkids copies of everything.
Yep. You better make a lot of copies of that too. Your
Well-
kids are gonna want that.
Yeah.
well, I'm trying to, yeah, I will.
Okay.